But let's start with the upside first.
The upsides are absolutely enormous. The potential uses of this are almost unlimited.
I only discovered AutoGPTs about a week ago and started writing about them. And after I started writing about them, Jeff Bezos followed me on Twitter, and all kinds of crazy amounts of people have been contacting us.
The show where we get you the week's biggest stories from around this world.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Our cover story tonight is about a rescue mission that became an emotional 17-day-long journey for people across India and beyond. The 41 trapped workers in Uttarakhand were rescued. There have been celebrations, and today we look back at the key moments, the questions, the high points and the low points, the lessons from that great Himalayan rescue mission, and how this is a story of man defeating machines. That's coming up shortly. Also on the show for you tonight, what do we know about China's mystery virus? We tell you how alerts have been issued in some Indian states as a result of it. Did Russia poison Ukraine spy chief's wife? We tell you what we know so far. Has Benjamin Netanyahu put Israel in a trap of his own making? What's the latest on the Israel-Hamas war? We also tell you about Kim Jong-un's new headache, where the people of North Korea are now losing hair. And it's a phenomenon that has left experts scratching their heads. It's been a day of celebration here in India. All 41 workers who were trapped in the Silkyara tunnel in Uttarakhand are out. They have been reunited with their families. They are safe and sound. Rescue teams worked day and night for that to happen. They did not leave any stone unturned. When the enormous U.S.-made auger machine failed, rescuers took matters in their own hands, and quite literally. The last stretch of the drilling was done manually, using the rat hole mining technique. The brave men were in the tunnels digging through the debris with their own hands, using shovels and pickaxes. You would call this technique primitive, something from a different century. But when push came to shove, it defeated the auger machine. Now, what the machine could not get done in so many days, rat hole mining specialists achieved in just a matter of hours. Before the big rescue last night, before manual drilling even started, all hope, remember, was riding on the auger machine. On day 11 of the rescue mission, to be precise, the trapped men were only 12 meters away. Hopes were high, but the drill hit an iron mesh. The rescue operation was halted, and it wasn't until the following morning that the drilling resumed. And in a race against time, we lost precious hours. The machine started working again, but only for so many hours. The same evening, it hit a metal pipe. Again, several hours were spent repairing the auger machine. Hours turned into a day. There was no progress in the drilling, even though rescuers were sweating away to get the machine to work. The next day, officials said that they needed only 2 more pipes to complete the escape paths. Only 2 pipes left to freedom. Drilling resumed in the evening, but no spoiler here. The machine hit a metallic object again, and this time it did not budge. It remained stuck. Specialized equipment was flown in from Hyderabad to get it out. 3 snags in as many days at a time when every minute counted. The excavator machines failed. Vertical boring also faced hiccups. What was left to be done? Something you would never have thought of. What worked in the end was the manual method. Rat hole mining, a technique which is illegal across India, one which comes with high risks of accidents and injuries. One misstep and a life could be lost. As if the mountain's dangerous topography was not enough, but these were desperate times and the NDRF wanted the trapped men out. A team of specialists was called in. These rescuers specialized in rat hole mining. Now, this method is generally used to extract coal in Meghalaya. The miner first digs narrow pits into the ground. It is just large enough for one person to go inside. It's just like rats burrowing through narrow holes. After digging the pits, the miner drops down into the holes using a rope and bamboo ladders. In the case of the tunnel, all the specialists had was a 2.6 feet wide steel pipe, their manual tools, and the prayers of 1 billion Indians, of course. For 24 hours, the brave men kept digging away, meters deep inside the pipe. Fatigue hit them in waves. Behind them was several yards of darkness, and before them was the fate of 41 workers. Workers who have been in that tunnel for over 400 hours at that point. Sophisticated machines had failed, but the workers' hands proved to be better. They chipped away 12 meters of debris. A miner named Munna Qureshi then pushed aside the last rock that stood between him and the survivors. And 40 minutes later, the first trapped worker was wheeled out. What followed was a moment of sheer joy. The survivor hugged his saviors. One of the miners left the tunnel in tears. These were tears of pure joy. They were earned after hours of manual digging and 17 days of darkness and despair. How did the trapped workers survive this? Some of them have recounted their ordeal, in fact. Listen in for yourself.
10-15 घंटे थोड़ा परेशानी हुई.
We faced difficulties for the first 15 to 20 hours for food and water. Then food was sent through a pipe.
उसी से हम लोग को खाना मिलता था.
After almost 10 days, another pipe was inserted and we received food like dry fruits, pulses, chapatis. Whatever we got, we ate it.
But for Gabbar Singh Negi, being stuck in a tunnel was not something new. In fact, this was the 3rd time he had been trapped in a tunnel. Owing to his past experiences, he served as a leading figure for the others. One of the workers said that they lived like brothers. They would, in fact, take a stroll in the tunnel after dinner. They would also try to do yoga. The ordeal is now over. What remains is the lesson. The tunnel was being constructed in a fragile zone. The state of Uttarakhand is notorious for seismic activity. This year alone, it has witnessed 1,000 landslides. Environmentalists have expressed their concern, their doubts over infrastructure advances, and they are right in doing that. Ultimately, it boils down to development versus conservation. India is ramping up infrastructure in the hilly areas. It is trying to connect even the remotest parts. At such a time, the tunnel collapse has come as a wake-up call. Uttarakhand has already taken the decision to review all the tunnels that are under construction. Let me now show you a viral video. In the frame is USS Eisenhower. It's an American warship, also one of the world's finest aircraft carriers. Now, this is not a promotional video. This video was reportedly taken by an Iranian drone which hovered over the American warship, shot the video, and then published it for the world to see. What was it supposed to mean? Was this a show of power, a sign of aggression, or an attempt to prove a point? Also, how did America allow this? Quick background first. The U.S. Central Command says the USS Eisenhower passed the Strait of Hormuz and entered the Persian Gulf on the 26th of November. That's 3 days ago. What was the warship doing in these waters? America says it was ensuring, quote-unquote, freedom of navigation in key international waterways. The waterway in question is dangerous to say the least, by the way. This is the Strait of Hormuz. It is one of the world's most strategic choke points. The strait is 39 kilometers long and 33 kilometers wide. It is the only route to the open ocean for a sixth of the oil production. 17.2 million barrels per day, to be more specific. Also a third of the world's LNG, or liquefied natural gas. The narrow strait borders Iran and Oman. It links Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, and the UAE to the Arabian Sea and beyond. America's Fifth Fleet patrols these waters. Previously as well, Iran had released photos and videos of American war machinery in these waters. But this time, Iran claims the U.S. aircraft carrier was, quote-unquote, compelled to alter its course. The Iranian Navy chief says the U.S. aircraft carrier that had entered the Persian Gulf waters was compelled to alter its course and land its helicopters following a direct warning from Iranian forces. The Iranian Navy flew drones over the American warship and ordered them to land their helicopters, and they complied with Iran's directives, quote-unquote. Now, the U.S. has not said a word on what really transpired in these dangerous waters, where the two countries, by the way, have a history of flare-ups. In 1988, U.S. warship Wisens shot down an Iranian passenger plane over these waters. 290 people were killed. In the year 2021, Iranian and American warships had an encounter in the Gulf waters. A ship commanded Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps cut in front of the U.S. CGC Monomoy. In April this year, Iran said its navy forced a U.S. submarine to surface as it entered Iranian waters in the Strait of Hormuz. What about this video in question? What point was Iran trying to make by publishing it? The composition of the carrier strike group, for example, is no secret. Even in its latest statement, the U.S. Central Command says the aircraft carrier was accompanied by the guided missile cruiser USS Philippine Sea, guided missile destroyers USS Gravely, and the French Languedoc. In other words, Iran did not reveal any closely guarded secret by giving the world a glimpse into the warship and the aircraft it was carrying. Clearly, there are some details with regard to this development that are yet to surface. A mysterious infection is spreading in China. Children in some other countries have started falling sick, and India has been put on alert. People are being told to mask up. Several states have asked hospitals and healthcare staff to prepare for the worst. Rajasthan is on alert. So is Karnataka, Gujarat, Haryana, Tamil Nadu, Uttarakhand. This is Uttarakhand. There are 3 districts that share borders with China: Chamoli, Uttarkashi and Pithogarh. Medical teams have been set up in this state to monitor symptoms of pneumonia and influenza in children. And in Rajasthan, rapid response teams are being formed. The state's health department has also been asked to draw up an action plan, on how it plans to prevent the spread of infection and treat those who fall sick. Tamil Nadu's health department is on alert. It has been asked to step up surveillance of respiratory illnesses. In Puducherry, people have been told to go back to wearing face masks in public places. So what really is happening in China? Children are falling sick. In some cases, classes have been called off. Hospitals are overwhelmed. Some of them, in fact, have set up so-called homework zones. Desks and chairs have been brought in so that students can study while recovering in the hospital. It's a crisis situation, or deja vu if you may. Xi Jinping's China is not saying much, but parents in China are extremely worried.
My child's test results show positive in both mycoplasma pneumonia and influenza A. I think her condition is quite complicated. Her dad has been lining up in the hospital for test results. After getting test results, he told me there are still 200 more patients before us.
The infection has spread to several northern cities, including Beijing, and we have visuals from one of Beijing's children's hospitals. The traffic is busier than usual. You can see parents rushing in their children. The hallways are packed. China is trying to normalize all of this. It is pointing at a seasonal surge of pneumonia.
There is no significant difference between this disease and the mycoplasma pneumonia we have seen before. The severity of the illness also shows no particular changes compared to the past. Treatment follows conventional methods and vast majority are effective.
China's response to the WHO inquiry has been on similar lines. Beijing wants you to believe that the surge in cases is because of simultaneous circulation of pathogens, including influenza. In other words, there is no new virus, there is no new outbreak, there is nothing abnormal about children falling sick in large numbers. Let's hope that's the case. But let's also not forget that the Wuhan virus also began as a mysterious pneumonia. An outbreak that China tried its level best to cover up. Whatever this new infection is, what are the chances that it can spread to other countries? If I could answer this question with a number, I would say 100%. There is no reason to believe that the infection will not jump borders. Every minute there are flights going in and coming out of China. Also, it is holiday season. You have tourists from China traveling around the world. Also, tourists flocking to China. Beijing, in fact, is incentivizing travel. It is allowing citizens of France, Germany, Italy, Malaysia, the Netherlands to travel to China visa-free. Just tell me one thing. Is it merely a coincidence that in the Netherlands, cases of childhood pneumonia are surging as well? Unlike China, the Netherlands believes in some sort of transparency. So we have numbers to show you. Between November 13 and 19, there were 103 pneumonia cases for every 100,000 children aged 5 and 14 in the Netherlands. And the week before, the number was 83. The graph is moving upwards, and it's a case of concern. It's a cause of concern. Also, the numbers are nothing like what the Netherlands is used to seeing during a regular flu season. Just consider this. Last year, during the peak of the flu season, the Netherlands had 58 cases of pneumonia for every 100,000 children. It's almost double already. Again, something is not normal. India has its guards on. Individually also, you must keep your guard on. Who are at risk? In China, and now also in the Netherlands, it is the children who are mostly battling this pneumonia. Remember, most of the young children are also not vaccinated against the Wuhan virus. So if you are a parent to a toddler, if your children are young, here are some of the symptoms you should be looking out for. Fever, chills, loss of appetite, nausea, sneezing, dry cough. Follow the guidelines of your doctor and stay safe. As for China, things are clearly not going well. People are going from one crisis to another. First, there was the Wuhan virus pandemic, then the zero COVID policy, an economic crisis, and now a mysterious pneumonia. The unending ordeal has given rise to a lot of angst. Also, a new epidemic. China today is battling a lottery epidemic. You heard that right. In the first 10 months of 2023, people in China spent $66.6 billion on lottery tickets. Let me just repeat that. $66.6 billion. That's an average of $47.5 billion. That's an average of $47.5 spent by each 1.4 billion Chinese residents. That is unusual, and the numbers prove that. There has been a 53% rise in the sale of lottery tickets as compared to last year. What do you think this lottery epidemic indicates? Now, Beijing would have you believe it is the rise in disposable income, that people in China have more money now to spend on lottery tickets. Except that's far from the reality. China's bumper lottery sales indicate the growing uncertainty in the country, the lack of market confidence, even a fear of the future. Let me explain this. You see, the Chinese economy is on the verge of collapse. In the Beijing Stock Exchange, major shareholders have been barred from selling stocks. Even China's most reputable companies, like Alibaba, are firing employees. Where do these employees go? They are gambling their fate. People in China are betting on their luck because that promises better returns than the Chinese economy. People in China would rather spend $50 on a lottery ticket than put their money in the market. The lottery boom is also a sign of desperation, after all. Today, 1 in 5 youngsters in China is jobless. It could be more, we don't know, because China has stopped publishing youth employment numbers. For the Chinese youth, the fear of the future is being translated into a search for luck. If you luck out in lottery, you stand to become rich. The odds are not great, but they better bet than investing in Chinese real estate. The sector is in debt, after all. Getting rich through lottery is also a better bet than accumulating wealth through employment in China. In fact, data from China's National Bureau of Statistics shows that profits in Chinese companies have decreased 7.8% in the first 10 months of this year. This is compared to the last year. A lottery ticket is currently more promising than saving your money in a Chinese bank. Today, China's shadow banks also are collapsing, so people are desperate. This is adding to their appetite for risk. They don't have much to lose by buying a lottery ticket, but you see, it gives them a chance to win a jackpot. The lottery epidemic is a story of China's $66.6 billion shame. It's a story of the state monetizing people's prayers against poverty. This is not something China should be proud of. Research over the years shows it's the people living in the poorer households who buy the most lottery tickets. This is a universal truth. People don't buy lottery tickets when they have good careers, a stable income. People don't gamble when they have confidence in the country's economy. But people of China today are gambling. What does that tell you? The wife of the Ukrainian military's spy chief has been poisoned. She was taken to the hospital yesterday. Doctors have found heavy metals in Mariana Bodanova's body. As of now, she is stable and recovering. But it wasn't just her. Several other Ukrainian intelligence officials are being treated for suspected poisoning. Who is behind all of this? Did Russia poison the Ukrainian spy chief's wife? Here's a detailed report.
This is Mariana Budanova. She is the wife of Ukrainian spy chief Kirilo Budanov. He heads Ukraine's GUR military intelligence agency. She has been poisoned. And this wasn't a one-off incident. It seems like a case of slow poisoning over an extended period. Doctors have found heavy metals in Mariana's bloodstream, metals that aren't normally found in the body. Mariana's health had been deteriorating for some time now, but it wasn't until yesterday that she was hauled to a hospital. Upon evaluation, it was found that the spy chief's wife may have been poisoned. Kyiv has now opened an investigation into what it's calling an assassination attempt. Who would have done this? Is it the Kremlin? Did Russia try to poison the Ukrainian spy chief's wife? After all, Kirilo Budanov is infamous as a Russian enemy. He is a hate figure for the Kremlin. In Ukraine, he is celebrated as a successful and versatile spy master. He has carried out a series of successful special operations in Russia, some of them deep inside the Russian territory. On top of his spying skills, Budanov also has a knack for trolling Moscow. For the reporters who visit his office, he has a humorous map of an imploded Russian Federation to offer. In these maps, Russia is reportedly divided into territories annexed by other countries. Kirilo Budanov is barely 37 years old and he's already survived at least 10 assassination attempts. But this time, it seems like he wasn't the target. His wife was. Mariana Budanova is an aide to Kyiv's mayor, Vitaly Klitschko. She lives with her husband in his fortified headquarters. It's not like Kirilo Budanov hasn't been cautious. On previous occasions, he has said that he's constantly with his wife for safety reasons. And yet now his wife has been poisoned. And it's not just her, by the way. Several other GUR officials are being treated for suspected poisoning. Do you know what that means? That there may have been a serious breach in security. This also suggests that Moscow may have undercover assets inside Ukraine. Just earlier this month, the top aide to Ukraine's military chief received a live grenade in a birthday gift. Major Gennady Chastyakov was killed as one of his presents exploded. And just days later, we have a high-profile poisoning attempt. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Let's now shift our focus to the conflict in West Asia. We have been monitoring the situation on the ground. Another batch of hostages to be released. But as we await that, here's a question to ponder over. Has Netanyahu put Israel in a trap of his own making? The short answer is yes. Let me explain this. The clock is ticking and the 6-day pause in fighting will soon come to an end. Talks are underway to further extend the truce, of course. And so far, Hamas has signaled a willingness to extend the pause. But where does Israel stand really? After the initial 4-day truce, Israel said it would be willing to prolong the temporary ceasefire in order for more hostages to be released. But Israel's willingness to extend the truce comes with a condition. Israel will consider it as long as Hamas frees 10 hostages a day. And despite willingness on both sides, an agreement is yet to be reached. And so the fragile ceasefire holds, albeit for a few more hours. Still, it is an open secret that the war is not going to end in Netanyahu's favor. The Israeli Prime Minister has stated the release of the hostages as one of the two key goals of the war. He has vowed time and again to bring back all those in Hamas's custody. Yet, for him, the task is not as easy as extending the ceasefire. It's much more complex. You see, striking a balance between the hostage release and also crushing the Hamas group poses a big challenge for Netanyahu, given the current scenario on the ground. What happens if the truce is not extended? Hamas has released at least 80 hostages so far, but they still have many more in captivity. The brief pause in fighting raised expectations in the region and beyond. If the truce ends now, the remaining hostages will remain in Hamas's custody. But if the war does not resume, Israel will lose the momentum of the war. The other goal of Netanyahu's war is the end of Hamas. That has not been achieved so far. The Israeli Prime Minister faces big problems. Problem number one, the rising demand from within the country. Netanyahu faces pressure from the Israeli people to make the release of the hostages his top priority, even if it means scaling down the military operations in Gaza. In fact, there are daily demonstrations in Tel Aviv outside the central command of the Israeli military regarding the same. Problem number 2, the risk of Hamas using the ceasefire to regroup. It's a real risk, flagged even by the U.S. Israeli security establishment, saying that the longer the truce, the more Hamas benefits from it. Each day of the ceasefire would allow much time for Hamas to regroup, also re-strategize and rearm itself. And not just that, it would allow Hamas to win wider support from the ordinary Palestinians. They will win more support by getting more prisoners released from the Israeli jails and ensuring food, medicines, aid to continue to flow into Gaza. Problem number 3, the Israeli hard right want Netanyahu to crush Hamas. Much of his government support currently comes from the hardliners, remember. They want him to fulfill his promise. They want him to end the ceasefire and start the war. In fact, the National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, has threatened to break apart the government if Israel does not restart its war with Hamas. Ben-Gvir said in a statement, and I'm quoting now, "Stopping the war is equal to breaking apart the government's." Ben-Gvir's far-right political party, Otzma Yehudit, holds 6 seats in the current coalition and it has 3 ministers in the cabinet. But that could jeopardize the early release of more hostages. It would raise more doubt about their safety. Hamas has said it is willing to release all the hostages in exchange for all the Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails. Which brings us to problem number 4. A longer Gaza pause could lead to Israel losing the momentum in the war. Israel now wants to start its military operations in the south of the Gaza Strip, but there is widespread concern that if what has been done in the north during the military operation is repeated, it will increase the number of deaths. Prolonging the ceasefire not only risks Hamas getting the time to regroup, it would also lead to Israel losing the momentum of the war. And once again, world leaders will rally to oppose the resumption of the war. And finally, problem number 5. The challenge Netanyahu faces from Israel's strongest supporter, the United States of America. At the outset, President Joe Biden staunchly supported the Israeli Prime Minister's war efforts. However, the situation has evolved since then. Netanyahu's urgency to crush Hamas has resulted in a significant number of casualties, including both Palestinians and Israeli soldiers. The current ceasefire is already very fragile. If more hostages are killed in the crossfire, the mood of Israelis against Netanyahu and his war cabinet will further worsen. And so, with Israeli hostages caught in the crossfire and no guarantee that Israel's military operation will successfully crush Hamas, Netanyahu finds himself in a serious dilemma. The truce may end sooner or later, but with no clear objective to end the war in sight, the Israeli Prime Minister hardly has any good options. Is your drinking water carcinogenic? What if the water you drink contains harmful chemicals? Why am I asking these questions? Because of some shocking revelations. Our next report telling you all about them.
What if the water you're drinking gives you cancer? Have a look at what this report by The Guardian says. Forever chemicals have been found in drinking water sources across England. First things first, let's now take a step back. What are forever chemicals? Polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAs, are also called forever chemicals. They are a group of more than 10,000 chemicals. They are used in a wide range of consumer products, like raincoats, non-stick pans, even makeup and fast food packaging. Why are they called forever chemicals? Because they do not easily break down in nature or in the human body. And here's the really scary part. Some PFAs have been tied to diseases including cancer. Yes, you heard that right. Cancer. Also developmental defects in unborn children, thyroid disease, fertility issues, etc. Now, let's go back to what the report in The Guardian says. Potentially toxic forever chemicals have been detected in the drinking water sources at 17 of 18 England water companies, with 11,853 samples testing positive. Let me repeat that, 17 out of 18. It says this is something that experts are saying they are extremely alarmed by. Naturally so. And by the way, it's not just the UK. In fact, earlier, the United States Geological Survey study found that at least 45% of America's tap water contains the toxic forever chemicals. Is there a way to protect yourself from these toxic chemicals? Recommendations include certain treatment options, such as filters like reverse osmosis. In December 2022, University of California researchers used an innovative form of technology. It involved the use of hydrogen and UV light to wipe out two types of toxic PFA chemicals in tap water. This method removed 95% of the chemicals. How long did it take? Less than an hour. But how many people have access to such technology? Also, that's just one part of the problem. PFAs can enter the food chain. They can gather in marine animals, including fish that humans consume. And this in turn carries ecological and human health implications. In fact, recent research found that dolphins with the highest concentration of PFAs in the world live in Australian waters. The threat of PFAs is a global menace, and a lot more needs to be done around the world in order to tackle them. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Let me now tell you about something strange that's happening in a strange part of the world. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has a new headache to deal with. The people there are losing their minds over a serious hair loss problem. That's right. According to reports citing South Korean experts, a growing number of North Korean citizens are dealing with hair loss. And these developments have left experts scratching their heads. Now, the thing is, freedom is hardly a concept in North Korea. The hermit nation maintains a firm grip over the lives of its people, even over their hair, in fact. I know this sounds like a joke, but it's the ugly reality for the people of North Korea. Wait till you hear this. As per reports, in the year 2013, the supreme leader of North Korea introduced a list. What kind of list? A list of haircuts that the people of North Korea are allowed to have. I am not making this up. Reports say there are 18 choices for women, 10 for men. Imagine walking into a salon and not being able to choose exactly what your hair will look like. But then again, the freedom to choose is something that North Koreans can only dream of. It's a strange concept to them. And now they are getting a haircut without having to step into a salon. Well, because they are losing their hair. It's a hair-raising phenomenon that experts have not been able to figure out the reason for. And here's what the experts have been saying while speaking to Radio Free Asia. They say that this could be the result of a number of things. Maybe infections that lead to hair loss. It could also be happening because of the use of soap and detergent. Let me tell you what one expert has said. Dr. Choi Jeong-hoon is from the Public Policy Research Institute at Seoul's Korea University, who, while speaking to RFA, talks about how it's not easy for North Koreans to file mild chemical products. Interestingly, Dr. Hoon was earlier in North Korea and fled to the south. An Kyung-soo runs a blog on health news in North Korea and said that many treatments are more like oriental medicines. Interestingly, South Korea has also been dealing with hair loss issues. In fact, the election last year witnessed hair loss becoming an election issue. Again, I'm not making this up. One of the candidates in the election, Lee Jae-myung, had proposed that the government should pay for hair loss treatment. But also, we only know what these South Korean experts are saying. Given how isolated North Korea is, it's difficult to know what's really going on there. Maybe it's the water, maybe it's an infection, who knows? Maybe it's a problem that's here today and gone tomorrow, or maybe it's a classic case of hair today, bald tomorrow. But if it is an infection, should South Korea be worried? Let's now talk about a leader in the eye of a storm, one that he triggered himself. Rishi Sunak has a unique brand of statesmanship that can only be described as strange. And in his desperate zeal to woo voters, Sunak managed to stir up a political storm. How, you ask? Well, he cancelled a planned meeting with his Greek counterpart. And what prompted this snub, you wonder? A spat over some cold, lifeless artworks. You heard that right. The British Prime Minister decided to cancel a scheduled meeting with the visiting Greek Prime Minister over the Parthenon sculptures. This dispute goes back years. Here's some background. Apparently, Greece has been requesting Britain to return some 2,500-year-old sculptures that were removed from the Parthenon temple in the early 19th century. Of course, it's not shocking for Great Britain, a land with a rich history of taking things that don't belong to them. Now, in this case, these ancient Greek sculptures were taken by a British diplomat, Lord Elgin Marbles, when he used to serve as the ambassador to the Ottoman Empire. The Greek government has been in discussions with the British Museum chair on a possible loan deal for the sculptures. And in a recent interview, the Greek Prime Minister took it public and complained that talks over a possible return of these sculptures to Athens were not advancing quickly enough. He described the continued presence of the sculptures in the British Museum like cutting the Mona Lisa in half, quote unquote. This statement by the Greek Prime Minister reportedly irritated Rishi Sunak, and that is why he cancelled the meeting at the last moment. Earlier, a spokesperson for the British Prime Minister had said that there were no plans to return these sculptures. And when asked about the Greek Prime Minister's statement, Sunak's office downplayed it. Of course, they called Britain's ties with Greece hugely important and said that the two countries needed to work together on global challenges. It's true that a 1963 Act of Parliament stops the British Museum from permanently handing back the sculptures. And Sunak's government has said that it will not change the law. So after Sunak's snub, the Deputy British Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden, was made available to meet the Greek Prime Minister. But obviously, that offer by 10 Downing Street was turned down by the Greek Prime Minister. And Rishi Sunak's last-minute cancellation had naturally left the Greek Prime Minister annoyed. But on Wednesday, the Greek Prime Minister struck a calmer note. He assured that the row over the sculptures will not affect the relationship between the two countries, describing the entire episode as unfortunate. He said, and I'm quoting, "I think that it will not affect the Greek-British relations in the long term. It's a relationship with historical depths." So was Rishi Sunak's move, after all, a bit of an overreaction? At least the Labour Party thinks so. They are calling it an unnecessary, foolish and short-sighted snub to one of Britain's few friends in Europe. They say that this gaffe by Sunak only adds to the impression that the British Prime Minister does not quite understand how diplomacy works. Because if he thinks that such steps will win him popularity with Conservative voters, then he is clearly mistaken. A Labour spokesperson said, and I'm quoting, "If the Prime Minister is not able to meet with a European ally with whom Britain has important economic ties, this is further proof he is not able to provide the serious economic leadership our country requires." The opposition said that by pulling out of the meeting, Sunak had missed a big opportunity to discuss illegal immigration with a key European ally. More reactions. And that's not all. Labour's Thangam Debonair accused Rishi Sunak of being petty and rude, quote unquote. The Shadow Secretary of State said the British people must be wondering what planet Rishi Sunak is on. All may be good between the UK and Greece, but this entire drama is a clear indication of Sunak's desperation. You see, he's on a mission to bridge a big polling gap with the Labour Party. And currently the Labour Party leads by about 20 points. And a general election is anticipated in 2024. Sunak is also feeling the heat from his own party, the pressure to save the Conservative Party amid a post-war high tax burden and a cost of living crisis. And so while Sunak displays optimism about Britain's growth, one cannot help but wonder, has he, in his zeal to save his party, tossed the UK's long-standing friendship down the drain? Are you a fashion enthusiast? How many outfits do you own? And how many of them are from Shein? Yes, Shein, the Chinese brand which sells Insta-worthy clothing items at next to nothing prices. Well, guess what? The fast fashion giant now wants to go public in the United States. It has filed for a U.S. IPO. How much is the valuation? The official figures are not out, but Shein is reportedly hoping for as much as $90 billion. $90 billion. And why not? Shein has enjoyed a consumer appetite bigger than any of its rivals. The Chinese company is driving in big bucks. The fashion and influencer industry is happily feeding into it. But at what cost? You see, Shein has a lot of tough questions to answer over the labor conditions. Some may even call it modern-day slavery. Other than that, there is the issue of design theft. Designers have been after Shein for making cheap mock-ups of their luxurious pieces. It all began in 2008. Newly founded Shein aimed squarely at Gen Z. It lured in young shoppers via Instagram and TikTok influencers, and it got them to stay through a barrage of discount codes. Yet, beyond its teen audience, Shein remained largely unknown. But everything was about to change. In the year 2012, Chinese entrepreneur Chris Xu took over. The American business mogul gave up his wedding dress business and acquired Shein. What started out as a website selling clothes for women and teenagers soon grew into a global fashion marketplace. It churns out thousands of new designs every day. It has over 250 million followers on social media and a portfolio of 10 brands. Shein's mobile app is currently the 4th most downloaded app in the United States. It serves customers in more than 150 countries and employs as many as 11,000 people. And that is where the trouble begins. Several investigative reports have found the labor slaving away in Shein's supplier factories is severely underpaid. That Shein, in fact, is violating human rights. That's what they found. Take a look at this letter. A group of U.S. lawmakers sent it to the Wall Street watchdog. This was in May when the word got out that Shein was planning to sell its shares. The letter claims that Shein used cotton from the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, the same region where Uyghurs are forced into labor under inhumane conditions. So, sure, you may get that designer top while avoiding a hole in your pocket, but Shein is stealing from its labor. It has been accused of doing that, and also from designers. Take the case of designer Tracy Garcia. Garcia is a New York-based designer, and this is a camisole that she designed. Have a look at this one. This is what Shein is selling. Let's just compare the designs. Look at the tiny details. Both of them are exactly the same. But Tracy Garcia did it first. She even offers YouTube tutorials on how to make this design. It seems like Shein was taking notes. Here's another one, a green satin dress. This one was designed by Tracy, and this one is now being offered by Shein. The same thing happened with fitness instructor, influencer and designer Cassie Ho. This is the skirt that she designed. If you go on Cassie's Insta handle, you can see the effort that she pours into her unique designs. But for Shein, it is incredibly convenient, it seems, to capitalize on someone else's hard work. Swimwear brand Baya also fell prey. This is the wrap swim costume by them and the Shein mock-up. While Shein could copy the swimwear's distinctive patterns and wrap-style design, you know what it could not recreate? No prizes for guessing. The quality, it's almost like inferior construction, a fit that's not quite right, and visibly cheap material. On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. This is me, Molly Kampir, signing off. Thanks very much for watching, leaving you with Gravitas images.
As democracy strengthens